I knew something was off when Brent called my timeline spreadsheet cute. Not detailed, not impressive. Cute, like a golden retriever in a Halloween costume. This man, who had been at the company for maybe 6 weeks and still pronounced logistics, like it was a startup brunchatum, had the audacity to stroll into my office with a green juice and say, "Hey, Lauren, mind sending over those expansion roadmaps?" Just for alignment. Just for alignment phrases, like hearing a rattle in the bushes. You know there's a snake, but you're not sure where it'll strike. I'd spent the last 13 months architecting our entire market entry plan into 2 new cities. Not just the growth, logic, but the back-end logistics, vendor reliability trees, routing algorithms, even the city-specific fuel tax. This wasn't a deck you whip up between lattes. This was war room material. Still, I handed over a version, sanitized, low resolution, like giving someone a coloring book after they ask for blueprints. He smiled that smug golf club board president smile and said, "Awesome. I'll loop you in if anything changes. Loop me in." Like I was the intern who fetched dry erase markers, not the woman who literally designed the system. Brent was now mining like a corporate raccoon. By the way, if you're listening to this, and you're one of the 95% who haven't subscribed or hit go ahead, it really helps the team keep turning these corporate horror stories into something you can enjoy with your morning coffee or vengeance smoothie. Anyway, the first few weeks after his arrival, Brent did what most private equity implants do. Scheduled alignment calls, asked basic questions in Slack to look involved, and pretended to absorb our ops model by repeating buzzwords he clearly didn't understand. Meanwhile, I stayed focused. Series D prep was no joke. $110 million on the table if we hit the operational throughput markers by Q3. And my plan, my very boring, very methodical, very correct plan, was the reason we were even close. Then came the first red flag. Brent asked for editable access to my multi-tab strategy model. Not view, not comments, editable. My eyebrows could have filed an HR complaint by themselves. I gave him a duplicate course, one with color-coded dependencies stripped out and some formulas replaced by hard numbers. It still looked official, just not useful. Then came the second flag. Brent casually mentioned in a planning sync that he was drafting a memo to the board outlining our Series D readiness strategy. A memo he had not run by me. A memo he claimed was largely collaborative, which was CFO speak for plagiarized from people smarter than me. Still said nothing. Just took a sip of my coffee and opened a fresh OneDrive folder labeled False Trail. You learn early in strategy work that not all battles are public. Some you win quietly with version control metadata and a damn good poker face. Around this time, I started noticing his name in strange meeting invites, investor prep calls I'd normally lead, partner syncs, where my absence was explained as calendar overflow. Meanwhile, kept slinking into my inbox with the same passive-aggressive requests. Can you summarize your East Coast vendor rotation logic, trying to cross-verify alignment on procurement timelines? Cross-verify alignment. I swear if jargon was an Olympic sport, Brent would have brought home 3 golds and a restraining order from Webster. Still, I played along because I wasn't ready to make noise. Not yet. He was still gathering twigs, was waiting for him to light the match. By the end of Q1, Brent had access to just enough of my work to sound credible, but not enough to be dangerous. Or so I thought. Then came April's investor luncheon, and my name, my work, wasn't even mentioned. That's when the real game began. The slide deck was mine. I recognized the formatting, the phrasing, even the typo and fulfillment latency. Brent was the one flipping through it on the 32-inch screen in the private dining room of the Penrose Club, like he'd stayed up all night sweating over supply chain bottlenecks. I wasn't invited. Let me say that again. I, the senior strategist who built our entire Series D runway, was not invited to the investor lunch with Helix Partners and Delta Growth. Instead, I found out through our event coordinator, whose exact words were and said you had a conflict, But I didn't see anything on your calendar. Right. My conflict was that I still had a soul and a spine. I watched from the corner of our Slack channel as live messages from attendees trickled in. Great job, Brent. Clean modeling. Love the margin forecast curve. Your ops strategist must be a killer. He replied with a thumbs up emoji. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care. God, I cared because I knew Brent wanted a reaction. Wanted me to storm into his office. Voice raised, credibility leaking out of every syllable. So instead, I ordered a chicken Caesar wrap and emailed myself a reminder. Duplicate everything by Monday. Triple checks, strip the formulas, salt the ground. Then came the bonus meeting. Now, here's the thing about bonuses at a mid-sized tech firm riding high on Series CC cash. They're not just compensation. Currency proof. A silent corporate. We see you. Mine was supposed to be $350K for the quarter. Approved, confirmed, and signed off in December by the COO before she left. And then Brent, with a half-assed smirk and a printed spreadsheet, sits across from me in the glass conference room and says, "We're holding your bonus for review. There's some concern about performance misalignment." Performance misalignment? I stared at him for a beat. Mean the performance that funded your yacht-sized holiday party in Aspen? He chuckled like a man who thinks sarcasm is a form of foreplay. Let's not make this personal, Lauren. It's just about optics. Oh, Brent, sweetheart, it's always personal. I didn't raise my voice, didn't throw a chair. I just walked out of the room, ordered another wrap, and started quietly backing up my entire archive into a dead drive labeled birthday. From that day forward, I built 2 versions of everything. The first was the one Brent could see, clean, well-designed, but strategically hollow. Projections slightly inflated, timelines just short of feasible partner contacts pulled from defunct RFP threads. Looked perfect at a glance, worthless in a real negotiation. The second was the real strategy, safely buried inside a folder titled Old Accounting 2019 with restricted permissions version control watermark tracking baked in like arsenic in a wedding cake. I didn't stop there. I quietly updated our legal counsel Marcy during a Tuesday coffee that Brent didn't know happened. Told her I had concerns. Didn't accuse, just documented. She didn't blink. Just said keep receipts. All of them. By the end of the week, I had 16 safe documents lined up like decoys in a minefield and a spreadsheet that tracked every IP address that touched them and thought he was being clever. He thought if he cut me out slow enough, surgically enough, I just fade out like an old employee badge left in a desk drawer. What he didn't realize was that I had already designed a version of this company that didn't include him. And unlike his strategy, mine worked. There's a particular kind of silence that lives in a strategist's office after a betrayal. The kind that hums like a broken fluorescent bulb. Just loud enough to keep you from thinking straight, but not loud enough to justify smashing it with a chair. I sat in that silence for 3 days after Brent blocked my bonus and stole my roadmap spotlight. Didn't say a word to him, didn't even look his way in meetings, just smiled when necessary, and kept building my own version of hell for him to step into. I called it Plan B, but in truth, it was always Plan A. You don't work in this industry as long as I have without preparing for the moment someone tries to yank your ladder just as you reach the rooftop. The first step was corruption, not of character, of data. I went back into every deck, every model, every timeline that Brent had ever requested, and started tweaking subtle things. Changed a projected vendor lead time from 11 days to 17. Shifted Allogistics partner's name from North Axis Freight to North Axis Freight. Just one letter, but enough to trigger legal confusion if anyone tried to contract them. Replaced real tax code with outdated ones. Nudged margin curves just high enough to look aspirational, just low enough to fail in execution. It was like building a haunted house with real drywall and fake doors. If Brent tried to walk through it, end up somewhere between a lawsuit and a competency hearing. But the crown jewel, the East Coast expansion timeline. In the decoy version, I moved all compliance dates 2 quarters forward, and I inserted a new partner I invented completely. Barrow and Green Logistics Solutions. The website looked real. The email addresses bounced back just slow enough to seem alive. The kind of detail only someone desperate or careless would run with. Didn't stop at the docs. I spun up a fake calendar, project called Q4 Pulse, and made it look like a high-priority initiative, populated it with fake task lists and scheduled meetings no one ever attended. Brent, of course, started named dropping it in meetings within days. "We're syncing with Q4 Pulse next week," he told a partner on Zoom. The guy blinked. I smiled. Still, I needed insulation. So, I went to Marcy. Marcy, general counsel, didn't believe in small talk or empathy. She believed in clauses and timestamps and making people cry on the witness stand. I caught her in the kitchen at 7:42 a.m. on a Tuesday, right after she'd microwaved a protein bar, a war crime in itself, and before the caffeine kicked in. "Got a minute?" I asked. She glanced at me like she was mentally calculating how many lawsuits it would take to make me disappear. "Is it about Brent?" Didn't answer. Just pulled out my laptop and slid it across the counter. She scrolled, paused, zoomed in, scrolled. Again. After 3 minutes, she looked up and said, "You've been busy." "I've been thorough," I said. "He's going to try something, and when he does, I want us 6 moves ahead." Marcy closed the laptop and nodded. "Start version tracking everything. PDFs only. Track downloads. Embed more data watermarks. Don't confront him. Let him walk into it." "Ready?" I said. She raised an eyebrow, took a bite of her melted bar, and said through a mouthful of synthetic peanut butter, "Good. And Lauren, don't let this become personal. Make it procedural." That was the moment I let go of the anger, the disappointment, the humiliation. All of it folded itself into a new shape. Tactical indifference. Brent wasn't my adversary anymore. He was a variable, a predictable, flashy, overconfident variable. I had already started mapping his range of motion. Back at my desk, I opened up the real strategy file. Secure, encrypted, time-locked like a damn vault, and smiled at the name of the final tab. Break glass in case of idiot. It started with a LinkedIn notification that made my stomach knot like a cheap phone charger. "Brent Foster viewed your profile." That's it. No message, no endorsement, just a little digital ghost waving from the other side of the platform. I clicked through to his profile out of habit. Sure enough, he'd updated his banner. Operational Growth Catalyst, Capital Efficiency Specialist, which is CFO speak for I've burned every bridge here. And I'm halfway across the next one with a gas can in each hand. That same day, I got a text from David T.R., an old colleague from back when I was doing contract work for our now biggest rival, Fredder. David was the kind of guy who stayed in everyone's good graces without ever giving too much away. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but the message was blunt. "Hey, just FYI, Brent pinged our CFO, claimed he was the architect behind your Q4 strategy, had a PDF deck, said he's shopping around. I thought you'd want to know." I stared at that message like it was a rattlesnake under my desk. Not because I was surprised. Of course, Brent would do that, but because it meant we were officially past the point of no return. He wasn't just cutting me out anymore. He was preparing his exit strategy, and he was using my blueprint to pave the road. The worst part, I knew exactly which deck he gave them. One of the fakes, the one with Themis-labeled vendors and the outdated compliance windows, even had a dummy initiative named OpsTide 2.0 that referenced an internal project we'd shelved 6 months ago due to regulatory conflict. It looked sleek on the surface, but anyone with real follow-row would trip over the first 5 steps. I took a long, slow breath and texted David back. "Appreciate the heads up. Keep your distance. He's carrying fireworks and gasoline." He replied with a single emoji. Microphone that night. I flagged the incident in a confidential email to Marcy. Subject line: probable IP leak internal. The body was short and surgical. Potential breach of strategy doc V4Q4 forward initiative by CFO Brent Foster. Third-party exposure via Freyer, a contact confirmed. This was a seeded decoy version containing trackable anomalies. Marcy's reply came back 11 minutes later. Keep monitoring. Do not escalate. If he presents it again, we'll activate TradeSec Protocol Line 7. Let him walk into it. Line 7? That's the clause buried in our IP retention policy that allows the company to freeze stock payouts and initiate external disclosure protocols if an officer is found disseminating sensitive but falsified material under the guise of proprietary strategy. Put it in place years ago after a contractor tried to sell a decommissioned API to a VC-backed clone company. I never thought we'd use it internally. I should have been furious, but I wasn't. Not anymore. At this point, Brent wasn't even disappointing. He was predictable, a walking case study in ego-driven self-sabotage. Every move he made fit the profile of a man convinced the rules were made for other people. Still, I had to be careful. There was a narrow window here. If I moved too soon, he'd pivot or vanish before we could trigger consequences. But if I waited too long, he could poison a deal, breach an actual vendor contract, or worse, damage our standing with the Series D investors. So I did what any strategist does when the battlefield starts shifting. I smiled in meetings. I took notes in silence, nodded when he repeated my ideas back to me like a parrot that had done an MBA in SMARM. Then I adjusted the watermarks. Each doc version now carried a tiny fingerprint embedded in a vendor contact. A single misspelled email domain. A shipping date 2 days early. A sourcing partner that didn't exist outside a fabricated LLC. I registered in Delaware for $89. Every download he made, I tracked it. Every time he forwarded something, pinged a hidden trigger. I didn't want justice. I wanted proof. Proof that when Brent finally made his move, and he would, we could drop the hammer so cleanly, the board would need earplugs. He thought he was burning me down. But I wasn't the house. I was the wiring. He waited for me outside Conference 3B, leaning against the wall like a movie villain who'd studied too many corporate thrillers. Tie slightly loosened, posture cocky, phone in one hand, smugness dripping like cologne. The board prep session had just ended, and I'd barely had time to close my laptop when he appeared. "Lauren," he said, tone syrupy with venom. "Got a minute?" I nodded, mostly out of morbid curiosity. I wasn't afraid of Brent. I was studying him, watching him like a defective Roomba about to roll itself down the stairs. The man was a case study in hubris, and I wanted front row seats for the final chapter. He leaned in closer, lowered his voice. "Just thought you should hear it from me first. I'm leaving." I waited, didn't flinch, didn't give him the satisfaction of asking where. And he continued, smirking now. "I'm taking your little bonus with me. Legal's not going to approve it, not with the performance review I just filed." I blinked. "You mean the review you backdated and filled with bullet points you got from my presentation notes?" That rattled him just for a second. A little eye twitch beat too long before he recovered. "Cute," he said. "Doesn't matter. The board won't care and neither will Frey Era. They're bringing me in to clean up their operations mess. Turns out they're very interested in your Q4 roadmap, especially the vendor sequencing stuff." Ah, there it was. He thought he'd stolen the golden egg, not realizing I'd swapped it with a ticking time bomb covered in glitter. I smiled, not a warm smile. Not even a polite one. Just a quiet, deadpan, terminal smile. "Then you'd better clear your desk," I said. Calm, measured, like I was suggesting he grab an umbrella before a storm. He laughed loud, forced. "God, Lauren, you really think you're scary, don't you?" I said nothing. He leaned in closer. "All fake confidence and Red Bull breath. Try being relevant next time. You've been here too long. Strategy doesn't mean what it used to." And just like that, pivoted on his overpriced shoes and strutted down the hallway like he'd won a war no one else was fighting. I watched him disappear around the corner, head high, completely unaware he was about to walk off a cliff. I'd spent 3 months digging, bricking, and lining with sharpened legal razors. Back in my office, I opened my laptop and pulled up the tracker. He downloaded 3 decoy decks in the last 2 days. All slightly different, all embedded with silent watermarks tied to his IP and device ID. One of them contained a confidential partner name that didn't exist. Another included a fake routing priority flagged in our legal system as bait content. And the best one, it included a partnership summary addendum that referenced Clause 7B, a fictional clause that didn't exist in our real documents, but did exist in our Trade SE protocol as a trigger. If anyone outside the company used it in communication, it would confirm document theft and intentional misrepresentation. As of this morning, our automated scan had picked up 2 external pings from an IP address in Palo Alto, the city where Freyer's West Coast board office sat. He'd taken the bait fully, joyfully, eagerly, and I let him because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about architecture, consequences, geometry. Brent had just walked into a perfect trap built with bullet points, bad assumptions, and arrogance in a tailored suit. I didn't need to tell anyone because in 24 hours, the documents would speak for themselves. Marcy didn't say much when I walked into her office. Just closed the door, clicked the privacy lock, and gestured to the seat across from her desk. She was already in war mode. Black turtleneck, glasses perched low, a legal pad half filled with notes and handwriting so sharp it looked like it could file a restraining order on its own. I pulled the flash drive from my jacket pocket and set it gently on the desk between us like it was radioactive. She didn't reach for it, just looked at me. "It's time," I nodded. He downloaded 3 doctored files. One of them includes Clause 7B. Marcy's eyebrow twitched. "The fake clause?" "Yep. He's already forwarded it outside the network twice. Same IP Palo Alto, likely Freighter's legal team or their board." She exhaled through her nose, not surprise, not even anger. Just the cold, resigned breath of a woman who knew the storm had finally reached land. "You documented everything." I opened my laptop, angled the screen toward her. She leaned in. The folder was called Trade Retain Bait Trails. Inside were subfolders labeled by document hash, each containing version histories, data logs, download timestamps, device IDs, and access footprints. Each file Brent had touched left a trail, one that lit up across our security infrastructure like Christmas lights on a crime scene. I clicked through the decks one by one, showed her the embedded anomalies. This one swapped the Q3 vendor onboarding timeline to show July instead of May. This one mislabels the New York compliance zone as Zone D instead of Zone A. And this one double-clicked contains the invented Clause 7B. She zoomed in. "Read the line aloud. Vendor escalations will trigger an auto-rees per Clause 7B, as outlined in the revised Q4 Operations Annex." She looked up. "Perfect. It sounds real, legal-sounding, but fake enough to be traceable. You sure he sent this one?" I nodded. Palo Alto pinged the unique tag embedded in the PDF footer, timestamped it at 10:14 a.m. this morning. I cross-referenced with his calendar. He had a networking call scheduled at that exact time. No notes logged. Marcy finally picked up the flash drive, turned it in her fingers. "All right," she said. "We got a TradeSec protocol line 7. I'll initiate it now." She opened a secure terminal window and entered the authorization code. Her fingers flew muscle memory from years of keeping the wolves at bay. I watched the cursor blink as she pulled up the internal clause buried deep in our IP defense strategy. Line 7. Internal Officer Misappropriation of Strategy IP Falsified Addition Trigger Condition. External transmission of seeded document containing non-existent clause or identifier. Action. Initiate legal predisclosure. Freeze bonus distributions. Notify rival firm via counsel with threat of litigation. Optional escalate to SEC or DOJ upon second violation. Optional being the key word, but we both knew it wouldn't stay optional for long. Marcy clicked Enable. The screen flickered. A secondary terminal opened automatically connecting to the SEC pre-audit portal. Our internal counsel dashboard synced. Our HR compliance team received an automatic alert. Brent's compensation disbursement was now frozen. So was his stock vesting. Somewhere in our document delivery system, an alert pinged Freyer as legal counsel. We weren't accusing them not directly, just letting them know what they'd received was poisoned, that any attempt to use it would open them up to liability, and that the source was Brent Foster, former CFO, current legal grenade. Marcy leaned back, watching the notifications cascade like falling dominoes. "You just flipped the switch on his career," she said. "Doesn't even know he's already fired." I closed my laptop slow and steady. He doesn't know a lot of things. For a moment, the room was quiet, that loaded silence before a building explodes. We were past the point of guesses now, past the whispers and contingency plans. This was the part where you sit back and let gravity finish what you built, because Brent hadn't just walked into a trap. He'd documented the whole damn journey for us. Brent's resignation came in the form of a 5-line email sent at 6:42 a.m. on a Thursday. No farewell message, no exit lunch, just a cold subject line. Formal notice resignation effective immediately. And a PDF attachment typed in Calibri like that made it official. HR didn't even get a chance to print out his offboarding checklist before he was gone. Laptop wiped. Card left dangling from a floor plant near the front desk like a forgotten lanyard at Comic-Con. He didn't say goodbye. Of course, he didn't. He thought he was above it. That smug confidence so deeply welded to his spine made him believe he was walking out of here with an empire in his pocket. In truth, he walked out with a flash drive full of legal landmines disguised as corporate gold. He thought he was the wolf stalking off into greener pastures. Was the sheep carrying C4 in his wool? We confirmed the file transfer within the hour. Marcy's system pinged when the watermark from Strategy Rollout Q4 Final 3. PDF was accessed from an external network in Mountain View. It matched the exact metadata Brent had touched, forwarded and renamed twice. His digital fingerprints were all over it like a toddler in a cookie jar. By noon, the courier was dispatched. We didn't send the letter via email. No, we delivered it on purpose. Overnight courier with tracking and a signature request. Friar's general counsel received it at 8:31 a.m. Friday. Inside the thick envelope, a printed legal notice, a summary of our IP watermark protocol, and a brief cover sheet. Alan Clean, professional legal eyes whom it may concern. It has come to our attention that certain documents misrepresented as proprietary strategic materials from our firm may come into your possession. Please be advised these documents are falsified, contain deliberately embedded inaccuracies, and have been digitally watermarked to track unauthorized distribution. Use or reliance upon these documents constitutes willful participation in intellectual property misuse and may expose your firm to civil litigation. We trust you will act accordingly. Nothing accusatory, just awareness like telling someone, hey, that steak you just ate might have been plastic. At 7:02 p.m. that same day, we received the reply. Subject line, cease and desist. Immediate enforcement request. It wasn't sent to us. Was forwarded to us by Fredera's legal team after they delivered it directly to Brent Foster's personal Gmail and his listed LLC's inbox. The tone was surgical, ice cold. Mr. Foster, it has come to our attention that the materials you presented during your preliminary employment discussions were falsified and appear to contain proprietary misrepresentations that put this firm at legal risk. Effective immediately, cease all contact with our personnel, partners, or affiliates. Do not present any further materials related to our company, and consider this formal notice that any attempt to engage further will be met with legal escalation. Your candidacy is withdrawn. We will not be moving forward. Translation: You're done, Brent. He'd walked out thinking he was about to land a 7-figure role rebranded as a turnaround genius. Instead, he became radioactive. Freya didn't just reject him. They wrote it down. Now that rejection existed in writing on record, forwarded to us with a little addendum from their counsel. We appreciate your proactive notification. No action will be taken on any materials received. We consider the matter closed on our end, but it wasn't closed. Not for Brent, because now our own board had grounds for retroactive bonus revocation. SEC notification, a tidy explanation for investors on why our CFO's tenure ended before Q2. I walked past his now empty office later that evening. Still smelled faintly of cheap cologne and overconfidence. On his desk was a printout of one of my old slide decks, one of the fake ones. It had coffee stains on the corner and a post-it that just read, "Make this sexy." I smiled. It was already sexy, just not for him. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m. sharp on Monday. No breakfast spread, no welcome slides, just 12 people in tailored wool, caffeine in hand, and tension humming through the conference room like a live wire under the floorboards. Brent was late. Of course he was. 3 minutes past the hour. Hess strolled in like he still worked there. This was some friendly debrief on succession planning, and not the corporate equivalent of walking into his own funeral. Sorry, he said, adjusting his blazer and flashing that same practice smirk. Crazy traffic? Marcy didn't even look up. Just slid a manila folder across the polished mahogany table, slow and silent. On top, clipped neatly, was a single printed sheet. The freighter a cease and assist. Brent glanced down. Read the header. His eyes flicked to the logo, then the bolded line beneath it. A breath caught in his throat, just barely, but I saw it. The first crack in the veneer. Board chair. Goldman cleared his throat. Mr. Foster, we'd like clarification on some materials you may have distributed during your recent career transition activities. Brent looked up, slow, cautious. I'm not sure what you mean. Marcy's voice was flat, clinical. Shared 3 documents with Freyer, a group. Under the guise of authoring proprietary strategy, materials traced digitally back to our internal servers, embedded with falsified data and legal watermark signatures. Brent tried to laugh. Wait, what? That's insane. I didn't. She cut him off, not with volume, but precision. Reading directly from the letter for theft of deliberately falsified trade secrets, including knowingly misrepresented logistical forecasting, non-existent vendor partnerships, and fabricated compliance schedules. These materials were seeded and tracked, and this individual's actions present a legal and reputational liability to an entity engaging further. Marcy paused, then looked up. That's their language, not ours. Brent blinked once, twice. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Goldman leaned forward. You distribute any documents to Freight Era without internal review or legal approval. I thought they were working drafts, Brent stammered. Nothing final. I mean, those were collaborative, right? Lauren helped build those. My versions, I said calmly, were under restricted access and never included Clause 7B. You sent that clause. That's the trigger. One of the board members, the one from Seaway Adventures, whistled low and muttered, Clause 7. Jesus Christ. Brent's face flushed. That clause, how was I supposed to know it was fake? Marcy tilted her head. You weren't supposed to use it. It didn't exist. The moment you cited it externally, you triggered a deliberate safeguard that's documented. Your login, your timestamp, the email forwarding trail, all of it. And now she continued, her voice icy and measured, are legally obligated to notify the SEC of the internal breach and external dissemination of flagged IPVAN, though the material was falsified. Because you presented it as authentic, that puts us in the position of appearing complicit unless we make full disclosure immediately. Another board member spoke up. So let's be clear. He not only fabricated his authorship, he also distributed a baited document. Got slapped with a cease and desist before his resignation was even processed. Marcy nodded. Correct. Frieder's letter was dated 2 days before his formal exit paperwork was filed. He was still an officer of record when it happened. Brent stood now, hands trembling slightly. You set me up. Marcy looked unimpressed. No, you reached for something that wasn't yours. We just put a lock on it. Silence followed. Thick, brutal, humiliating. Oldman turned to HR, initiate termination of bonus disbursement and equity grant, retroactive to Q4, draft the SEC disclosure, and prepare a formal notice of internal policy breach for investor relations. Brent stood frozen, a man who'd spent years bluffing, suddenly holding a handful of nothing. I didn't speak again, didn't need to. Marcy had spoken the last necessary word, falsified, and the board had heard it. Motion passed with 0 opposition. One sentence read aloud by Chair Goldman was all it took to end Brent Foster's career in less time than it takes to heat a breakfast burrito. The board hereby revokes all pending bonus, compensation, and equity vesting privileges under Clause 12.4 of the Executive Ethics Addendum due to confirmed misappropriation of internal intellectual property and misrepresentation of authorship. Didn't even ask Brent to respond. They just moved on. I sat still, hands folded in front of me, watching Brent's spine shrink one vertebrae at a time. He looked like a man who trained for every outcome except the one where the house didn't just win. It designed the game board. HR leaned in. Mr. Foster, we'll need you to surrender your badge and digital credentials now. He blinked. Now, I thought, can't we talk about this? Marcy shook her head. Talked enough. You're being escorted out per protocol. He turned to me then, eyes wild, voice low and bitter. You set me up. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked him in the eye and said, calm as a locked vault, I set up a safeguard. You triggered it. Security arrived within 30 seconds. Quiet, respectful, professional. They didn't touch him. Didn't have to. Brent gathered his things in silence, barely managing to slip his laptop into the padded sleeve without fumbling. He paused once at the door, turned like he might say something dramatic, something that would redeem or reframe or absolve, but there was nothing left to say. He walked out, and with that, the boardroom exhaled. Goldman cleared his throat. On to the matter of bonus realignment. Marcy slid a new folder across the table. This one had my name on it. Oren's Q4 bonus is to be reinstated, she said. And based on recommendation from both legal and investor relations, we're attaching a supplemental equity grant tied to IP defense outcomes. They didn't even ask me to leave the room for the vote. They just did it quick, unanimous. As the meeting broke up, a few board members lingered near the windows discussing the SEC language draft and whether or not to spin the story preemptively for Tech Circle. One suggested framing it as a bold internal audit success. Someone else suggested silence. I said nothing. I didn't need to explain myself. The proof had already done that in PDF, metadata, and a cease and desist letter written like Adamstone. Later that evening, I walked the long hallway past the executive offices. Most of the lights were off. Brent's door was open. The room was stripped clean like a hotel suite that had never been lived in. No photo frames, no knickknacks, just an abandoned phone charger and the lingering scent of false confidence. Then I saw it. Taped to the center of the glass door was a single sticky note. Sharp black handwriting, unmistakable. Next time, read the Mercy's parting gift. I stood there for a moment, bathed in the soft glow of the emergency exit light. No fanfare, no champagne, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that justice hadn't shouted. It had whispered, and that whisper echoed louder than any scream ever could. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.